Welcome to the Chain Out Podcast with your hosts, Jeremy and Daryl.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to season 2, episode 90 of the Chain Out Podcast. I am your host, Daryl, and my co-host, Jeremy. How you doing?
Doing great, Daryl. How could I not be great when we have one of the biggest interviews we've ever done coming tonight? We're going to be joined by Disc Golf Hall of Famer and Canadian disc golf legend, Elaine King. So we're going to let the listeners know it looks like the chat's filling up right away. So thank you for joining us. You got about 15 minutes before we get to the interview. So do us a favor, feel free to message and call all of your friends and tell them to join us tonight.
Yeah. So for the people watching on the podcast, they will notice that something feels a little bit off tonight, Jeremy. We're so used to just being able to reach over and turn our heads on the podcast, but seeing in person, something is not quite right tonight.
Yeah, looking a little different here. I feel like there's a bit of distance between us.
Yeah, just a little bit. So for those who are not aware, Jeremy is all the way down in America. Whereabouts are you, Jeremy?
Yeah, and I am in Memphis, Tennessee. All the way down in Memphis. I'm down here for a conference and doing some stuff for work. But you know, Daryl, coming down to Memphis for work, I was thinking of having just a carry-on bag, and then a couple little things got in the way, and I needed to get a checked bag. One reason being that I needed to put, a handful of discs in my bag,
Right.
including
So
this beautiful Elaine King, well, not Elaine King, but this MVP trail. I'm sure Elaine would be happy about that.
yeah, absolutely. So what did you obviously you got a chance to get out and play. Where did you play?
Well, there was a course kind of close to my hand-picked hotel, which was called Sea Isle Park. Now, it wasn't like the best course in the area per se, because, Bud Hill is here, Shelby Farms, but it was a nice 18 hole, kind of like a Langholm, a park course. And I connected with a couple guys on the course. They were doing their league night, and everyone had gone out for league, but the one gentleman was out there all by himself. And I went over,
Hmm.
and his name was Rob. He was kind enough to take me under his wing. And then his buddy, and I hope I get the name right, Dute, he came out too. So I had played with these two guys. They showed me the ropes, and it was a great time. And now I've got a course in Tennessee on my U disc now.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. So
Hmm.
Doc obviously is the token American that we have in our chat. He says, "America, hey buddy, make sure you go and see Elvis's house." So I don't know if that's been on
Ah,
your one of your trips around the area there. And then Trevor also wants to say, "Don't be fooled by the American Smarties." So that's a bit of a throwback to last week's episode. If you were in the chat, you would have known what we're talking about there. So yeah, so it looks
well,
like
I'll watch both of those. I didn't know, Daryl. I didn't know that Graceland had a disc golf course. I didn't know Elvis was a big disc golfer, but I guess maybe we'll
I'm
find
sure.
that out next time.
Yeah, I'm sure you can go there and just like just do a pop up course. That'll be fine.
That's right. So,
Yeah.
how's your week been? Has anything been going on with you?
Not too much. Just got out and play last week. Haven't really played too much since. Got out to play at Hermitage, one of our local courses. And wanted to give a quick shout out to some people that it's one of those things that's always amazes us that we do this little podcast and it's we're growing in size and people from all over Canada watch us and um get to know us now. But when you're on a course and somebody walks up to you and says, hey, Daryl, you kind of have to look around and do a double take and think, do I know you or do you just know me? But I was lucky enough out there. I seen friend of the show, hasn't been on the show, but he's a friend, Jeff Sabine. He was teeing off from the Blues. So I got to see him tee off on hole one from the Blues. And then a little bit further out, somebody who I played with at the Queer Disc Golf event last year. That event obviously is the one that I won. He
Oh,
finished in
yes, yeah,
second.
that one.
Yeah, that one. He finished in second. So shout out to Connor Baird as well for seeing him out on the course. So yeah, that's all that's really been happening with me.
Ah, okay. Well, that's kind of a good local recap. And then kind of down south, we had a tournament just over this past weekend, which was the Lost Egg Tournament. It took place down in Wayne, Alberta. Now, if you don't know where Wayne is, it's this tiny little town where you cross a whole bunch of single lane bridges to get to it. It's almost like a ghost town around Drumheller, Alberta, kind of in Badland dinosaur country. And it's a unique tournament because it's still played on tonals, and the
Right.
terrain is, from what I've heard, not for the faint of heart. So there's steep uphills, steep downhills, and when we've talked to tournament director Jordan Alway, what he said is that there's some areas that are completely off limits. So if you throw your disc and it goes astray, you need to abandon it. You can't even go retrieve it for your own safety. So it's to me sounds like one of those another bucket list type tournaments to try.
Yeah, exactly. So we should just give a shout out to the winners. So congrats to Noah Higgins for taking down the MPO win. He took down that win by 1 stroke over Ethan Evans. This was Noah's
Mhm.
fourth win, if you can believe it, Jeremy, at the Lost Egg.
Wow.
Honorable mentions should go to Kai Sotnikow, a former junior guest that we had on from last year, and Edmonton local Sean Heidelbrecht, because they tied for third. Over on the FPO side, Edmonton's own Zoe Lorenz Bozer took down the win by 3 strokes over Sarah Trudel. And now this is normally a 3 round tournament, but the third round did get cancelled due to the weather.
Well, I did see too, Daryl, when you say that, I saw that there was a heck of a lot of rain. Like they were sheltered underneath the tents that they had on site, and I think they wanted to go, but there was no way they were going to get that last round in.
Yeah, exactly. I also wanted to just take a second to, so for our listeners, head over, want to give some good vibes to our Canadian and Edmonton FPO, Terry Hong, who it was involved in a pretty serious accident. And I get this, a propane gas tank exploded right beside her.
Like, what are you talking? Are you like,
Like
is
for,
this like a little stove one or like a barbecue one? What are you talking about?
like from what I can gather, it was like a barbecue gas barbecue size bottle. So something to do with an open flame and a leaking gas bottle, but somehow it exploded right beside her. So she received some really bad burns, bad bruising as well. She went to the hospital. She had to keep getting her bandages changed every day. Head over to her Instagram and Facebook, send her some good wishes over there and some positive thoughts. Now, I thought that was bad enough. But it turns out that
Hmm.
she was actually playing the tournament as well while all bandaged up and everything like that. So, you know, as
Oh,
well we know, Terry, that's
I,
something that you would expect.
well, looking at those pictures that she was posting, they're like, as you said, they're not for the faint of heart, right? Like, you got to
Right.
be careful if you're going to look at them. But I can't believe she was able to still play. She's such a trooper.
Yeah.
But another thing that we got going on is the 2025 PDGA World Championships presented by Discmania. They took place in Finland over the weekend, and we've heard it many times that this is the most coveted championship of most of the disc golf pros. They want to win worlds. And we're going to say congrats to Gannon Burr for winning the MPO division by 1 stroke over Aaron Gossage. And Goose, he'll be over at Canadian National this fall. And then
Mm-hmm.
on the FPO side, Owen Scoggins won in a playoff against Lita Letamaki. And from all accounts, the two of them, they had a lot of fun. And it was quite the age difference, too, because Owen had already won the FP40 Masters Worlds this year. Then she
Right.
wins the FPO Worlds, and her playoff competitor is a 15-year-old just up and comer. So what a great world story.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah. Bringing it a little bit closer to home, Thomas Gilbert was out there as well. He played a 1008 rated event, which is just a little bit under his rating, but he finished tied for 105th with Garrett Gerthy. Sophia Donica was also over there. She finished tied for 22nd. That was with Alexis Mandahano and Ali Smith. She had a 954 rated
Hmm.
event, which was 2 points higher than her rating. So that was good for her. And she finished it out with $705 in her pocket. Thomas and
Ooh,
Sophia
that's all right. Getting
are,
a little cash for the pocket, hey?
yeah, exactly. That never goes amiss. Sophia and Thomas, they're heading over. They're actually right now, they're in Chengdu, China for the World Games this weekend. Head over to the World Games website if you want to see how you can follow along and support them. So they've already posted a lot of cool content on their socials right now. I don't know if you've seen it, Jeremy. This big 360-degree circle Mando that they have to throw through.
Oh, yes, yes. That's
Yeah,
so cool.
yeah, exactly. So a little bit of a spoiler for everybody's in the chat, and if you're watching live, we're going to be excited because we're having Thomas and Sophia on the podcast next week to talk to them about how that tournament went over in China.
Yeah, they got back to us pretty quickly on that. Now we know nothing's really in stone until they get here because Daryl's still working on these binding contracts to make sure, right, that the guests get on. But as
Yeah,
far as we know, they're going to make it next week.
they give us our word, that their
Yeah,
word.
and
That's
then
all we
after
can say.
that's it. So after this episode, as always, stay tuned for our Patreon episode after this chain out one. We'll be chatting more disc golf and have another quiz for you. You can get the link free over on our Patreon side there. But Daryl,
Hmm.
I want to get through this topic show. Do you think we can get started?
I think we can get started. Let's go for it.
All right. So tonight's guest has so many accolades, it is hard to know even where to start. But let's start with the basics. She has been a PDGA member since 1985 and has a four-digit PDGA number.
Yeah.
She's played 625 events. She's won 323 of them. Quick math, that's like a 52% win percentage. She's won 17 majors, including 5 FPO World Championships. She's in the Disc Golf Hall of Fame. She's been active in shaping our sport through the different roles she's held with the PDGA. She's been sponsored by my favorite disc manufacturer, MVP Disc Sports, since 2017. Join us in welcoming Elaine King.
Oh,
Evening.
can you hear
Hi.
me?
Hey, Elaine,
Yes,
how are you?
we can hear you fine. Thanks.
Doing great. I'm glad to be here with you guys this evening.
Perfect. Yeah, we're
Oh, Elaine, we're
excited.
so excited to have you on the show.
So I was talking to Jeremy that our first episode we released on YouTube was November 28th, 2023. When we got to our 50th episode, we talked about some of our dream guests that we wanted to have on the show. And I remember Jeremy saying that we'd be lucky to have the legendary Canadian disc golfer Elaine King on the show. And now here we are, episode 90, and we have you here. It's a bit of a pinch us moment for us.
Well, you
So
got to dream bigger, guys, if I'm your dream. But I get thrilled to be here. It's great to talk to you. Great to talk to some Canadians. I'm living in the States right now, and it's pretty crazy down here.
yeah, well, that's where you are as well right now, Jeremy. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And Elaine, when we invited you on, you had also mentioned that you'd heard of us. And that was kind of a big moment too, because not only were we excited that we were going to have you on, but that you actually knew who we were. That was exciting as well. So we're going to stop fanboying though, and we're going to get the interview kind of moving along here. So now, Elaine, when we do a chain out uh, interview, we want to give you the full experience. And part of that is finding out how you got into disc golf. But instead of just saying,
Mhm.
Elaine, how did you get into disc golf? We come up with this fictitious origin story based on a movie that may or may not have anything to do with your story. So you can just sit back and listen, and then you and the listeners can maybe guess if I'm anywhere close and what movie it is. And then we'll find out what the true story is, okay?
Can't wait.
So here we go. So, Elaine, maybe you had always been a tinkerer, a person who could look at something from a perspective no one else ever had and make things better. One day in the Berg like cold of Ontario, you discovered the sport of disc golf. You took to it quickly, but like many players, your game was a little toothless at the start. You worked hard to improve. There were a few hiccups along the way, but once you started winning, you could throw straight as an arrow and were as unstoppable as a night fury. Soon enough, people realized your perspectives could help improve the game. The PDGA, the Hall of Fame, and the MVP Disc Sports Company all came calling. Now people line up at your clinics so that you can teach them how to train their discs. Now, maybe that's not quite how you got into disc golf, so why don't you tell us how it really happened?
Well, it was Ontario, and it was not cold, I have to say. It was a summer's day. So my husband and I had just gotten married, and we were living in downtown Toronto. And he happened to see a poster advertising the Canadian Disc Golf Championships, which was to be held on the Toronto Island.
Right.
And he was very excited about that, marked down the date, and we went. I'm not quite sure what I was expecting to to find. Frisbee at that point was, to me, you throw and catch it. We had our backyard whammos. But Eric was a little more sophisticated. He knew some trick throws and catches. And so he expected to see freestyle. But when we went to the Toronto Island, we got directed to where they were playing, and they were playing the disc golf portion of the Canadian Open, which was an all-around event. And, I just kind of watched incredulously as they were throwing these frisbees long distances and even rolling them. And my husband Eric was very excited by the whole thing because he realized immediately it was a sport you could play on your own, and you didn't
Right.
need a partner of roughly equal ability like you did with freestyle.
Mm-hmm.
So the next weekend, we took our backyard whammo 115-gram frisbees, and we took the ferry out to the Toronto Islands, and there we were on Ward's Island, throwing these frisbees on the disc golf course.
Yeah.
Now, although that sounds foolish now, back at that time, um, Innova had not invented the eagle or the arrow.
Right.
So people were actually playing with lids, like what you would think of as an ultimate disc.
Okay.
And so, yeah,
Right.
these 115-gram discs were not that far off. We soon did get the lids, the Midnight Flyers,
Mm.
and started playing with that. But there's definitely a huge difference in Eric's game and my game at the beginning, because Eric was just throwing pretty straight just down the fairway, and I was throwing this way and throwing that way and throwing this way and landing in bushes, and you know I wasn't very happy with the sport. And so when we got this the Midnight Flyer, it didn't really improve things much. And honestly, if it hadn't been that the arrow was invented and launched and we got a hold of some a couple months later, I probably would not have persisted with it. But with the beveled edge disc, I could get my little fingers around it.
Right.
My hand's not very large. Um, so I was able to kind of get a hold of it. And that sort of started me on an upward trajectory in the sport.
Right. So looking back to that
Okay.
Toronto Island course, what
Mhm.
was the course like back then? Has it changed much from what we know today?
It's changed a lot. It was approximately half the distance it is now.
Okay.
So it was
Okay.
the holes were much shorter, as befitted the disc technology way
Right.
back
Yeah.
when. So the Toronto Island course has extended and extended over the years. Um, but the spirit of the course remains the same. And there's still, I think, one hole that is the same as the original.
Right. And back then, were they still playing on tonals or were they baskets at that point?
They were baskets. Now,
Right. Okay.
Toronto was way ahead of the curve due to Ken Westerfield having
Hmm.
being the promoter in the area, and he was really in touch with people in the States, and he managed to get pole holes up. And so we had the course on the Toronto Island and the course in Centennial Park in Etobicoke. And so we had two pole hole courses in Toronto as of, oh, gosh, 1978, I believe, is when they were
Wow.
installed with
Right.
funding from Orange Crush.
There you go.
Okay. Well, and Elaine, one of the things I grew up, I was born and raised in London, Ontario, and I knew that since I've started to get into disc golf, that they had a course there for quite a long time. But I'll tell you, growing up, I wasn't even aware it was there. So that was a welcome surprise when I learned that disc golf had been in Ontario for as long as it had. And so now you did mention it as well. You had said there that you weren't quite hooked on it right at the beginning. So how long was it from that first time you threw the disc till you
Oh,
finally had those arrows in your hand and you were starting to enjoy the sport?
well, I mean, it was a few months. We started kind of midsummer, I think, and it was September when the arrow um, came to Toronto, and we were able to buy some from Ken Westerfield. And but still, I mean, I wouldn't say I was hooked. It was something I did on the weekend with my husband, and I didn't think of it much more than a recreational pastime.
Yeah.
So that was
Mm.
1983. And Eric started competing in 1984.
Okay.
And I did not compete at that time, but I went and, you know, watched along with the group. I even graduated to taking score because, of course, that was on a paper
Yeah.
back then. Um, and I think it was late 1984, I played my first event. And then in 85, I started playing a little bit more. And so I think it probably took me a whole year before I really felt comfortable enough to, you know,
Commit.
throw a disc in front of other people, as it were.
Yeah. And you kind of mentioned it there, leading into my next question. Excuse me. We'd spoken to Scott Stokely before, and we'd asked him about what the
Mhm.
early days of disc golf was like. And obviously, back then there was no disc golf scene, there was no U disc and things like that. So, how did you find out about those disc golf events?
So yeah, let's just pause for a moment. Hold on to something tight, you folks who were uh, born after 1980. There was no internet.
Right?
No
Yeah.
internet.
Can you
No
remember a
internet.
day? Yeah.
So um, we used the mail to get information.
Right.
So seriously, I mean, it's kind of hard for people now to imagine what it was like. But
Hmm.
you know, your main source of information was at each course there was a course billboard, and you printed off posters and you stuck posters on the billboard. And then people who were having tournaments handed out these flyers, and people would staple them to the billboard at their course. And then tournament directors would have mailing lists,
Right.
and you'd make up flyers and you would mail them to people who attended your tournament last year. The
Wow.
results, so the
What?
PDGA magazine that printed a list of the tournament, the city it was in, the tournament director, and their phone number. And so you could phone the tournament director if you were interested in going to their event.
Right.
And, you know, like back
Wow.
then, everything outside your city was a long distance call that you paid by the minute. So it was all fairly expensive, really.
Yeah.
Um, to register for a
Yeah.
tournament, you know, if it was a smaller local tournament, you just showed up the morning of and you paid cash to the tournament director. And, you know, there weren't that many people playing. So there was generally not an issue of a tournament getting full. But if it was a bigger event, you would mail a check. Yeah, you would mail a check. And so it
Wow.
was kind of a problem for Eric and I when we would go to a big tournament in the US, because we mail this check, but it was a check on a Canadian bank. And so banks in the
Right.
US would be very confused by it, and they either couldn't do it or there was service charges. So generally, we mailed the check, and when we got to the tournament, they gave us back the check and we gave them money.
Right. Yeah. I mean, yeah, you obviously
Well,
found a
I
system that
would.
worked.
Well, that's
Mhm.
just the way it was done back then. And of course, we scored on paper. And then when the tournament was done, the tournament director had to fill out a form and mail it into the PDGA for the course to be registered, the tournament to be registered.
Right.
So, you know, there's a whole bunch of my early tournaments that are not listed on the PDGA because the paper records never made it to the
Right.
PDGA, or they got lost.
Oh,
I mean,
wow.
Okay.
both things happened. You know, if tournament directors didn't put in their paperwork, just all the records were lost. And then there was an issue many years back where the PDGA lost some records when we went from one administrator to another. Again, that was before the age of the internet where things were digitized.
Right.
Right. Well, I would say, Elaine, at this point, you hear a lot of tournament directors now as if they don't get a full tournament on disc golf scene the day after they post it, they're a little nervous and thinking about running a tournament back then, and you don't even know until people start showing up that morning for the most part whether they're coming or not. There's a lot that's
I know.
changed, that's for sure. Yeah.
Well,
Now, when you were,
because it was
go
such a
ahead.
small sport and there were few tournaments. It's not like there was one every weekend like
Right.
you see nowadays in many areas. Um, you had, and you were allowed to have two PDGA events per year per city. So there
Wow.
were not
Wow.
many events.
Yeah.
So Toronto would have two,
Hmm.
St. Thomas would have two, Lewiston, New York would have two, Rochester would have two, so, we played maybe 12 to 15 tournaments a year because that's all there was within a reasonable driving
Yeah.
distance.
Yeah. Wow. I didn't know that.
Right. Well, and Elaine, you'd mentioned about Ken having those midnight flyers and those arrows. Now, another thing that we've heard of is back in the early days, it was popular to have one of those really fancy disc golf stores that what would happen is you would put a key into the back of a car and pop a trunk, and that was the store. Was that kind of how you were buying back then?
Absolutely. Yeah. People would sell out of their trunk. That still goes on today. Don't talk about that like that's so out of date. But yeah, you could, there were a few brick and mortar stores like Kiss the Sky in Colorado was a brick and mortar store. Gotta go, gotta throw. There's a few courses around. John David and Patty Kunkel had a store as well. But, it was a matter of there was a few stores in North America.
Mm,
Eventually, the
Okay,
Kite store in downtown Toronto carried a few discs.
right.
nice.
But again,
Well,
these stores had a catalog that they would mail out.
Right.
And, you would look through the catalog, fill out a form, mail them a check, and then they would mail you the discs.
right.
Yeah.
Well, we really love it, Elaine. We appreciate you sharing it because it's to us, a lot of disc golfers. Like I was aware of disc golf probably in the early 2000s, but I never really got into it as much as I did until kind of as a pandemic golfer. So all of those stories really tell us how far the sport has come. And my question to you on that would be, with all these changes that have happened, is there anything that you kind of miss about those days, or is there anything maybe that you have enjoyed the change of since that time?
Oh boy. I mean, so much has changed. So let me tell you about a few of the first disc golf tournaments that I competed in and watched.
Hmm.
So if it was summer, most of the male competitors were not wearing a shirt. It was hot. So there were some people I actually never saw with a shirt for years. Um, People would drink beer and smoke pot as they played. Um,
Wow.
it
Right.
was, they would be careful not to get caught by any police that happened to go by, which wouldn't be very often, depending on the park. But
Mhm.
there were very few rules. The rules of disc golf back then were just very scant, and they had to do with just how you played the game. There was no um, tournament like competitor manual. It was just the
Right.
rules of disc golf. Um, and so let me tell you, the uproar when the rule came in that you had to wear a shirt. Oh my gosh. And so, men in protest were like ripping sleeves off a shirt and like ripping the shirt so it's like a half shirts like the football players wear sometimes, and
Yeah.
just wearing these raggedy old things, but it was a shirt. Um,
Yeah.
so that I think has changed for the better. Um,
Yeah.
and it just shows you, I mean, the roots of disc golf were from the hippie movement. The
Mm,
frisbee was really
Mhm.
embraced by the hippies. And I mean, we still had some of them. And if you've seen photos of people way back when, I mean, Ken Westerfield had the long hair and, was definitely at that tail end of the hippie movement. Um, so that's the kind of atmosphere it was. And, gradually it's gotten a little bit more organized, more professional, and that trend has just kept going till what you were just talking about, the worlds in Finland with enormous crowds and spectacular courses and international participation.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, that's awesome. Well, when we were starting out and we did your introduction, Elaine, we mentioned that you have 323 wins out of 625 events, a 52% win rate. And when we look, that's the most wins of any female disc golfer. And according to PDGA, so you can give me a hard time if I'm wrong, but it says that you're third overall with amateur Fred Needham and Brian Schweberger or Schweby kind of there just above you. And I wanted to go right back to the start and say, do you remember your first ever tournament win? Now, this is the one, as you said, maybe it's not your first one because this is the one that PDGA reports, but I've got that one there. Have you ever looked to see which one they have on record as your first win?
I looked at that yesterday because I was kind of curious. I think it was the Flats Classic.
Yes, yeah. Flats Classic 2, the C tier, a 4 round tournament, and you won by 8 strokes. Do you remember who was chasing you down on that one?
Uh, was that Supe?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Susie
that's
Pay.
exactly
Okay.
right. So we wanted to start with that one and then kind of move forward to some of the bigger events. But what do you remember after going from someone who maybe wasn't that interested in disc golf, kind of going along and playing here and there, to starting to compete and then getting that first win? Was that kind of where the bug was starting to bite you a little more?
Well, I had sort of figured out earlier that year, just sort of by observing that, obviously the women's field was much smaller than the men's field. And so I
Hmm.
figured if I worked at it, I could probably do reasonably well.
Right.
And um, all the women I played with were amazing. They all gave me tips on how to throw better. It was really, really collegial, and I just soaked up that information. I watched the other women, and honestly, just watching other women throw and seeing their form was super helpful to me, because women just throw differently than men do.
Hmm.
And yeah, I was starting to kind of get things together. And at that tournament, I mean, wasn't a perfect 4 rounds by any means, but I was, yeah, starting to get to that point where I'd been working hard, practicing. I was starting to really get control over where the disc was going, and things were starting to come together.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's fantastic. So that was the very first tournament. So fast forward
That I
now.
won. Yeah.
That you won. Yeah, that you won. That's listed on the
Mhm.
on PDGA. So let's fast forward a little bit now. Let's move up to 1991 when you won your first PDGA Worlds in Dayton, Ohio. You took down the win there by 1 stroke. Do you remember who that was? A win over?
Oh boy. Um, oh, I
It's
mean, I'm
okay.
thinking like Vanessa Chambers.
No, we have it. We see that it was Suzanne Gendel.
Gendel? Oh, from
Gendel.
Germany, yes.
Yeah. So we got to ask you, what was it like to win your first Worlds? What did that feel
It
like?
was kind of interesting. Like at that point, I knew that I had the skills to win. It was a matter of, getting it all together at the time. It wasn't a surprise to me that I won, I but it's just like looking at any event today. You could say, well, any number of, like, here's the number of people any one of these guys or any one of these women is likely to win.
Yeah.
So I felt like I was in that top tier there, and so I just needed to play my game, minimize the mistakes, maximize my opportunities. And so, yeah, my husband Eric and I had played mixed doubles, and we didn't do very well. We weren't meshing very well as a team, and so that was not a great start. But then the course you played at mixed doubles, when I played that on my own, I actually got a better score than my husband or
Right.
I had gotten, and so that kind of made me feel like the tide had turned. Things had gotten off to a bad start, but then
Yeah.
got momentum and I was getting into my stride.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember still being nervous because anything can happen in disc golf. Like you can take
Mhm.
any number on
Yeah.
any hole.
Yeah.
You can get
Absolutely.
into one of these putting, um, you know, black holes where you can keep going for it and keep going past. But
Yeah.
so I was trying to just kind of keep focused and just try to focus on each shot as I was doing it. But yeah, it was an amazing feeling to kind of watch it happen and feel myself getting closer and closer.
Yeah. So when we look back at it, that tournament was a 5 round tournament plus a semi-final and then a final
Mhm.
as well. So 7 rounds in total, something that we don't obviously see nowadays. So what was it like playing? And you mentioned as well playing in the doubles with your husband. So what was it like playing that many rounds? I'm assuming it was longer than a weekend.
Yeah, so it was a standard format for many years. It was um, Tuesday through Friday, um, 2 rounds a day, semifinals Saturday morning, finals Saturday afternoon.
Okay.
Wow.
Wow. So that's a
I
lot of
may be
time to
off.
commit.
Maybe it's Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Yeah, I think that was Tuesday to Thursday. So anyhow, it was often 8 rounds, and then the ninth was the semis, and then a final 9.
Wow.
But remember, the courses were shorter.
Yeah, that's true.
They were not 5-hour
Hmm.
rounds. They were 2.5-hour rounds,
But
3-hour rounds.
you're also throwing arrows and eagles and like all the earlier discs that we don't not not the lightweight technology that we see nowadays as well.
Well, it was like throwing putters and mid ranges
Hmm.
on a shorter course.
Okay.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So with it being like obviously you say that was kind of the standard format back then, was that was the kind of layout for the events. When you play that many, does that come down to more of a test of stamina versus a test of skill? I mean, I know you have to have both, but you obviously got to be able to stay the course as well.
I wouldn't say stamina rather than skill. I would say
Mm,
stamina in addition to skill. And
right.
there's the
Hmm.
physical stamina, and then there's the mental stamina, which is very different.
Yeah.
So, all of the players in the field have the physical stamina to play that much. As I was saying, they're short courses. It wasn't, enormously physically fatiguing, but there could be an aspect of physical fatigue, especially on the hilly courses, or as
Right.
the years went on and the courses did start getting longer and longer. But the mental fatigue was also a big factor because
Hmm.
whatever you did in the morning, you had to try and rest and refresh at lunch, and then you had to go back again in the afternoon and focus and concentrate. So I think as you were saying, um, Daryl, it was a big deal to have that skill to be able to focus during the rounds and relax
Right.
when you weren't at the round.
Yeah. So
Hmm.
typically nowadays, I think whenever we go out and play like a practice round at some of our local courses, we tend to see, depending on the course, maybe 2.5 hours for a round of disc golf. If you're playing, I assumed you'd be playing on a card of four. How,
Yeah.
on the shorter courses, how was it taking you about half as much time as what we'd expect today?
Uh, I mean, no, I think, 2.5 hours was pretty typical.
Right. Okay.
I mean, I do remember quite distinctly. playing the morning round, having lunch, playing the afternoon round, going back to the hotel, jumping at the pool, and it was 4 o'clock.
Right.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
And so
Well,
I mean, that's one thing I miss about the Worlds is the social aspect of it, which is completely disintegrated now at the Worlds and at big
Oh,
tournaments. Tea times just does not allow you to socialize with the group.
right.
For, you know, even throughout the early 2000s, I think, you go to Worlds and everyone's got the shotgun start. And, you end at a fairly decent time and you can talk to your friends. You can go to dinner with people. You have
Hmm.
time to refresh. But with the tea
hmm
times, you never know where you're ending and starting.
Right.
Um,
Yeah, that's a good
and
point.
I think it's taken away completely of the camaraderie.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's a
fair.
great point. Yeah. So Jeremy did some digging and we just had an interesting fact here and we wanted to get your perspective on it. So we saw that first place FPO that year won $775. This year, last week, Owen Scoggins took down the win, took down $15,000. So on the surface, that looks like quite the increase. But over 34 years, it actually works out to be about an increase of $418 per year. How are you? What are your feelings on the growth of the purses in the FPO field?
Well, I mean, it's fantastic the growth, especially in the last few years of the FPO purses. It makes it possible for women to be on the road and to
Hmm.
make it a full-time career.
Hmm
I mean, I never ever played disc golf full time. I was always a weekend warrior.
Right.
And it was, I mean, no women ever thought of just being on the road and playing disc golf.
Yeah.
You might do it for a summer,
Yeah.
um, you might do it for a few weeks. And really, in the 1980s, 1990s, a few men might be on the road and traveling, but
Yeah.
again, they would really just do that for the summer.
Right.
I mean,
hmm
Climo toured for the summer, but then he was a roofer during the
Right.
off season
Yeah.
because there was an off season.
Right.
Yeah.
So we all worked pretty much.
Yeah.
So it's very different nowadays. And of course, now we've got video coverage. We've got fans. We've got people who want to see it. The sponsorship obviously has just taken off astronomically the last 10 years.
Yeah.
So that is a really positive movement in that people know what disc
hmm
golf is now. And you can have professional athletes.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
Yeah.
that's great. Yeah. So sticking with worlds for a second,
Mhm.
you went on to win four more worlds as an FPO: 1992, 1993, 1994, and 1997. As a Masters player, you won worlds in 2009, 2017, 2019, and 2024. Plus, you've won the US WDGC and the US Masters tournaments multiple times. So, out of all of those tournaments you've won, is there one that you look back on that has a special place in your heart for you?
Um, I would like to mention a tournament that's not on your list.
Go
So,
ahead. Yeah.
um,
Okay.
let's see. It was, and I'm going to have to put my no glasses on. No, Circus City Open 1987. So that's
Oh.
before I won Worlds. And the
Okay.
reason that tournament stands out in my mind is that was my first big win.
Right.
And I didn't
Okay.
know I even had the capability of winning.
Right.
So it was such a surprise. So there were 17 women at the tournament, which was an enormous field.
Mm,
And there was, Vanessa Chambers, world champion. There was Tammy Pelicane, world distance champion. There were all these big names at the
right.
event. And there was a kind of a World Cup series that year. And the stop in Peru, Indiana was one of the World Cup series. So it was a similar to a DGPT type event in terms of its importance. And I remember bits and pieces of that tournament. I remember once I got 2 deuces in a row, which was kind of like an insanely crazy thing to happen. Like to get a 2 was very unusual. Um, and I didn't even know I was ahead, and we were a few holes to go. And one of my card mates said to me, Elaine, you're winning. And I thought, oh, that's kind of cool. But of course, Vanessa's going to come back and win. She's world champion.
Yeah.
Um, so we played a couple more holes. And then I remember very distinctly the last hole. It had this river that passed, across the fairway. And then the river kind of turned around and passed again. I guess it wasn't a river, it was just a creek.
Mm-hmm.
But for my drive, I could just about throw into that creek. So, like when you stood on the tee, you had to decide: am I going to lay up or am I going to try and blast it over?
Yeah.
So I decided I was going to try and blast it over, and I just blasted it over. And unfortunately, Vanessa went into the creek. And my second shot, same thing. I thought I'll try to just blast it over the creek as it, turned back, and I was
Mm-hmm.
able to do that. And then I canned my putt, and all of a sudden I realized I won, and it was just the craziest feeling. So, I
Yeah.
mean, that's what you were trying to
Oh,
get
wow.
me to say for 1991, my first Worlds, but
Yeah.
it was actually that 1987 tournament again, because I didn't know that I had the capability
Yeah.
to win an event. And so that one is super special to me.
Yeah. No, that's fantastic,
Yeah.
because we can only look at the
Mhm.
tournaments and ones that we think that stand out, but it's that one that maybe flew under the radar, but it has a special place for you. That's fantastic.
Mhm. And I
Yeah.
would also
That's
say
a great story.
the US Women's Disc Golf Championships that in 2007, 2009, I mean, at that point I was, let's see, was I own? I might have been own, the old lady playing against, the younger women.
Yeah.
And it was very stiff competition, and I managed to kind of eke out those 2 wins there. So those were kind of special because, again, I was, you know, faced with a lot of women who threw farther than me,
Right.
and so that
Right.
was really exciting and special.
Yeah. Fantastic.
Okay. Well, Elaine, as we move it along, I want to hit one more of your accolades, which is a big one as well, that a lot of disc golfers who have played for a long time would like to have under their belt. And that's in 1997, you were inducted into the Disc Golf Hall of Fame. And we kind of want to know a little bit about that experience because we talked to Brian Henniger, and when he told us about his induction, he said they tried to surprise him. And they didn't do a very good job on that one. How did it work out when you were going to the Disc Golf Hall of Fame?
Oh, I was completely surprised. Um, so that was back in the days of the Worlds where there was a player meeting, and
Right.
no, it wasn't the player meeting; it was the banquet. So everyone went to the banquet.
Mhm.
You know, it would be, I don't know, the Friday night, say, of the event typically, and so all the players would get there. They're, you know, I think it was included with your entry fee. And
Mm-hmm.
so there would be various awards given out there. And it was I was absolutely completely surprised. I did not expect it. I was barefoot. My hair was still wet from my shower. I walked up there. I'm not completely sure what I said. Um, but I think I talked about the fact that, when I first started playing, I exhibited no particular talent for the sport. And, it to me, it goes to show that, if you want to do well and you work at it and you practice, you can, achieve your goals.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. I mean, it's nice to have the surprise, but you kind of wish that they gave you a little bit of a heads up, and maybe you might have been able to wear shoes or something.
Well, things were super casual back then. Remember, I mean,
Right.
the men were still not happy about wearing shirts.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. So moving on to the latter stages, of your playing career, and moving on. So your impact on the sport has been far more than just playing. So recently, you've been heavily involved with PDGA over the years. Can you tell us about some of the roles that you've had during the PDGA and some of the changes that you may have helped implement?
Yeah, so wow, looking back to, my first um, experience with the PDGA management, PDGA board of directors, the organization was tiny. So to give you an idea of what it was like, there was one employee at the PDGA, and that was the PDGA administrator.
Right.
And the administrator, there was a number of different administrators throughout the year, but their office at home or their bookshelf or whatever was the PDGA office.
Right.
And um, the board of directors was elected. And, if there's work to be done, it was pretty much the board of directors who needed to do it, or they would need to set up a committee to do the work because
Right.
there was just that one employee who was spending his or her time opening the mail, which had all the tournament results, and
Right.
then entering it into, I mean, at that point, we had computers, but so there was various computer systems over the years, but they'd need to type everything into the computer system.
Yeah.
And then, PDGA members, well, they would send a check and they'd have to mail out the stuff. So,
Yeah.
um, so I started out as being regional director. And so that was a role where I needed to correspond with the state coordinators and the country coordinators. And so I would write them letters and tell them what was going on and mail the letters to them. And then they would write back to me with questions or comments. And,
Right.
there was just this mail correspondence, and that's how the organization ran. And eventually I became the the commissioner of the board because of two resignations, and then I was elected to that position.
Right.
And so a few of the things that I did, well, one of the things I was pretty happy about was um, I implemented with the disc manufacturers a policy where they would need to identify the disc
Okay.
because um,
Oh,
if you had a special tournament stamp on your
Hmm.
disc, there was nothing to say what that disc was. And so
Right.
that's where Innova had a bunch of people who took a pen and wrote, FLX or, ROC or something on the back of the disc
Right.
to identify what it was. And then eventually they came with stickers that would do that. So
Yeah.
that was one thing I did. And I was on the board where Jeff Holmberg and Stork kind of came up with the idea of expanding the technical standards to include disc rim sharpness and flexibility. So we worked through that.
Right.
What were some of the other things? Sorry, I got to put on my glasses so I can see what I wrote here. Um, yeah, so coordinating also with Europe.
Right.
The European um, disc golf scene was there as well as Japan, but very, very small. And so again, communication by writing to people was the way we kept them connected. And then the board would vote on all the rules. They'd vote on, if there was any um, membership fee increase or any perks of membership. But honestly, things moved really slowly back then because we
Yeah.
had just the one staff member and communication was very slow. And we did have conference calls, but
right.
they were really expensive. It would cost something like $300 or $400 to have a conference call
Right.
each month. So we
Wow.
didn't do it monthly, you know, it was things were expensive and it moved slow.
Yeah.
So the second time I was on the board of directors, it was very, very different because, of course, now we were into the internet age where we did things by email and
Hmm.
video conferencing, and a lot of the discussions we had were around um, rules, making sure that you know the rule committee rules made sense. They made things better and clearer and not more confusing.
Right.
Um, Technical standards continue to evolve, so we got more technical standards for baskets. Um, Deciding on where the major events would be held and worlds.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
uh, yeah, so those were just a few of the things that were done.
Yeah.
Um, and partnerships of the sport, the partnership with UDisc, the partnership with Disc Golf Pro Tour and Disc Golf Network.
Hmm. Yeah.
Wow.
No, that's
It's
exciting.
so much that you've been a part of, Elaine, and it's a lot of people will look and see all the winning and all the playing that you've done, but maybe they don't realize how much more that you've contributed to the sport and all these other roles that you've held.
Well, it's been really, really interesting to, be part of the board of directors, in the early days and then more recently, and just see how it's changed. And of course, there's so many more initiatives that are getting done, and having a staff. Things are just moving quickly, and we're able to make much more of an impact. All these um, reach outs to youth groups and people with disabilities and parks department liaisons and getting the word of disc golf out there. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, it's a big professional organization now.
Yeah. And
Yes,
we
definitely.
thank you for giving us a bit of an insight into how it used to be and how things started and things that you've changed through the years. What we want to ask you now is, so now currently you're still with the PDGA. What is your current role with the PDGA and what do you do?
Oh, um, do not have a current role with the PDGA. I've been off the
Oh,
board for several
Okay.
years now. So
oh,
right now I'm focusing on
Okay.
local efforts. I've got there's a women's meetup group that I'm helping to support along with a few other folks, and just having a really great time um, working and encouraging the women in the Raleigh Durham area.
right.
Okay. Well, and Elaine, when we talk on the podcast, we talk a lot about how to grow the sport and whether it's the game as a whole or if it's the junior game, as we spoke with the juniors in our last two episodes to try and bring some more attention there. We've talked to Ryan Bevilacqua, who's done a lot on that side. We also talk about the women's game and how to grow that, and even just being more inclusive and helping some of the other underserved communities. So with the growth that's coming along, we think it's happening at its own rate, but is there anything that you can let us know, or your thoughts on how we can continue to grow disc golf and kind of ride that pandemic wave that we had, and especially specific to the women's game? Is there a way to grow that? Because we know that when you look at the ratio between men and women in disc golf, it's still quite lopsided.
Well, this conversation's been going on for 40 years.
Mm-hmm.
It really
Okay.
has,
Right.
about how to get more women in the game. Um, yeah. It's kind of funny, the demographic of disc golfers. Like when I started, in the 80s, most disc golfers were in their 20s, and
Right.
some were in their 30s.
Mhm.
And, we thought back then that you were so old by the time you were 35 that you had to be a master. Um, so, you know, there was a lot of talk about getting more women in the game because all these men were kind of at that age where they were really looking for a woman to settle down with, and if she could play disc golf, wouldn't that be ideal? um, but yeah, it's been a hard sell to get women into disc golf, and I think there's a few reasons for it. um, the first reason is a, that women by and large, seem to prefer team sports to individual sports.
Okay.
So there's no problem getting women to play ultimate.
Right.
There's just
Right.
this abundant women playing ultimate, but disc golf is an individual sport. So that just seems to be something that not as many women are interested in. And I think because of the history of the sport, until fairly recently, um, a lot of the women you saw in the sport had a male in their life who brought them into the sport, whether it be a boyfriend,
Yeah.
a husband, a brother, someone
Mm-hmm.
got them into the sport. So these were women who were not necessarily athletes who decided to pick disc golf. They were women who, played disc golf because of someone in their life. And I
Yeah.
fall into that category. I mean, if it
Right.
had not been for my husband, Eric, saying, I want to play this sport, I never would have, at that first, Canadian national championships, I wouldn't have said, wow, I want to go play disc golf next weekend.
Right.
It just didn't appeal to me immediately.
Yeah.
Um, but now we are really starting to see women who are athletes picking disc golf.
Yeah.
So, something that's always been an idea of mine, but I've never been able to figure out how to implement is we need to take all the women who in high school were doing the individual sports and the weird sports that you can never do anywhere again, like throwing javelin, shot put, high jump, long jump. That's great while you're in high school. If you're really talented, you can do that in college. But, you know, once you're, 22 and you're out of college, and if you're not in the Olympics, you're never going to do a long jump again. But you're a woman who's athletic and likes doing individual sport. I think
Yeah.
it's that group of women that we need to convert to disc golf.
Right.
That's a
So
great
there's my
point.
brilliant idea. I have no idea how to implement it.
Well, it gives us a starting point for sure, or at least another avenue to try.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you something more practical now that I've given you the airy fairy idea. Um, the If you have a local club and you play random draw doubles, that is almost certainly going to drive women away,
Yeah.
because when it's random draw
Mm.
doubles and the guy who has the woman as his partner,
Yeah.
there's the eye roll.
Yeah.
And it's like, even
Mm.
if the guy's nice about it, the immediate response is, oh, no, I've got the woman.
Yeah.
Um, it's just not
Mm.
a format that is friendly to women. So try to think of something else. A handicap would be better.
Right.
If you want to
Right.
play doubles, handicap, and it's not just the women, it's also the weaker players. Um,
Right.
because it's just not fun for women to feel like she's a dead weight, and
Yeah.
it's the same week after week after week. And your women are just not going to persist typically.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's a
Yeah,
great point.
that's
And
fair.
we interviewed Carrie Neal very early
Mhm.
on
Yeah.
in our podcast, and she said exactly the same thing, that when she would show up, literally had cards, walk off and not want to play with her because she was on a card with men. And all the power to her was that she was going to stick around and play no matter whether they wanted to play with her or not. So yeah, it takes
Hmm.
a strong-willed woman to persist and persevere through all of that,
Mhm.
male prejudice that you're going to experience out
And I
there.
mean, it's not a matter of women not being strong-willed enough. It's just like, why would you want to spend your time with that group of people? Like, there's a
True.
lot
Yeah.
of sports you can
Hmm.
play. Like, why would you choose this group of people who is completely unwelcoming? Like,
Yeah.
most women would say, "Oh, forget you guys. I can go and play volleyball,"
Right.
and they'll warmly welcome
Yes.
me.
Yeah. Yeah. I just
Yes.
wanted to give a quick shout out in the chat here as well, because you'd mentioned that a lot of women get into the sport through husbands and boyfriends and
Hmm.
things like
Hmm.
that. So we also have Trevor Okrafka in the chat here, and he says, and possibly father as well, because obviously his daughter is Brooklyn
Ah.
Okrafka. So yeah, all men can do their thing to get women in their lives into the sport as well. But I wanted to just kind of keep us moving along here. We've gone through your playing career, all of your PDGA and things that you do outside of the sport. But if we jump forward to kind of almost present day, so we're excited that to hear that you'll be coming up to Ontario this year to participate in the Canadian Nationals. Are you looking forward to it as much as we are?
Oh, absolutely. My husband and I played the Newcastle course
Mm,
last year, and oh my gosh, what a gorgeous, gorgeous course.
wow, that's good to hear.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah. When was the last time? Well, I mean, we know the first time, but do you remember the last time that you would have been at a Canadian Nationals tournament?
Oh my
This one
gosh.
we don't have an answer
It
for you,
was
Elaine.
probably
So your
before I,
your guess is as good as ours.
well, I mean, I've been down in the US for 14 years, so I'm guessing it's been 14 years.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Wow. Yeah. So yeah,
Yeah.
we're excited to be a part of Nationals as well. We'll be doing the opening ceremonies there and the players meeting. So we're excited to be just our little bit of contribution to the event as well. Um, So you mentioned Newcastle. We're obviously from the Edmonton area, but we're heading out there. So all four courses are going to be new to us. Have you played any of the other courses as well? So you got Cedar Creek, Haute Goat, and Project 15,
I did play Haute Goat last
right?
year as well. That
Okay.
is just an amazing place. There are goats. It's true.
Right? Yeah.
It's a goat
There's a
farm,
whole farm there.
and
Yeah.
there's all kinds of different goats. So that was really interesting. Um, yeah, the
Hmm.
course has a number of different layouts,
Hmm.
and um, we didn't have good phone reception, so we couldn't follow UDisc, so it's a little bit confusing when we were there about which basket we were supposed to throw to, but
Right.
I'm sure there'll be abundant signage for the event and it'll all be very clear.
Hmm.
There were some
Yeah.
really nice holes at Haute Goat, so definitely looking forward to that. And what a wonderful venue for just hanging out. They've got lots of room and open space and outbuildings and picnic tables. And
Yeah.
yeah, that should be really, really fun for people to get together at. And then Cedar Creek,
Oh,
I've
that's
not
good.
played. And then the one up north, the
Project
51
15.
course.
Yeah.
Project
Yeah,
15.
my division does not play that. So um, I'll
Right.
have to
Okay.
go and play it sometime just for fun, but I won't be
Yeah.
competing up there.
Right.
Well, there you go. Well, we've had a chance, Elaine. We've seen the tournament coverage because there's been some coverage for events at Project 15 and Hope Goat. So Daryl and I have saw it that way. And then recently, there's Dan Baynard put up a playthrough of Cedar Creek. And just as you said, from your experience with the two courses and what we're seeing, it's just going to make this such a great event. And beyond the four great courses, there's so many other extra events happening. So there's going to be that Wombat Glow Challenge, and Jeff Panis is going to be out. There's going to be the Crokinole tournaments. There's going to be a long drive challenge with Thomas Gilbert. And if that wasn't enough, there's going to be clinics. Philo's going to be doing a clinic. And from what we hear, you're going to be doing a clinic as well. So can you tell us what's involved in an Elaine King clinic?
Absolutely. Yeah, I really enjoy doing the clinics because I was coached by other women on how to throw, and that made such a difference to my game. And I really enjoy sharing what I've learned with
Hmm.
other people. Um, so I'll be going through the basics of driving, approaching, and putting, and hopefully um, putting maybe a little bit of a different explanation and different spin on it. I like to work with the group. It's a maximum of 20 people. So I want to make sure that I get a chance to work with everyone and make sure that they're um, able to understand the concepts and apply them. So
Right.
my hope is that everyone at the end of the clinic will starting to get the hang of something that maybe they didn't do before. They'll have maybe some new skills, some new technique, some way of looking at things. One of my um, secret powers is teaching people how to throw sidearm who have been completely unable to throw it. So
Right.
if there's anyone like
Oh.
that, you will walk out of the clinic and be able to throw a sidearm. Not very far, but you'll be able to throw one, and it'll give you something to work on. Um, I also
Great.
really like to work to help people understand what their body's supposed to be doing and how they have to make their entire body work with them on the drives, on the approaches, and on the putts. And whether it's backhand, forehand, overhand, um, your body all has to work together. So those will be some of the key points.
Right. That's
Sounds
fantastic.
awesome.
Yeah. So, Elaine, on the podcast, we've had pros, we've had amateurs, we've had A-tier winners, we've had pros down on the pro tour, we've had lots of people, we've had juniors. And whenever we get them on, we always, Jeremy and myself are in that MA40. I'm almost out of the MA40 division, but we're in that division.
Mm.
We always ask everybody, is there any little tip that you can give us to hopefully make our game a little bit better? I mean, I don't have a very good sidearm, so I mean, maybe that'll be something that you can give to me. But if there's one little tip that you could give us to hopefully improve our game, what do you think you could give us?
Um, a very important concept is your arm should never be doing anything separately from the rest of your body. So anytime your arm is,
Mm.
if you're putting
Mm-hmm.
and your arm is going forward, your body should not be standing there. Your body should be moving forward
Okay.
with your arm.
Oh.
Same thing when you're driving. I don't know if I've got enough room here
Yeah, yeah,
to
that's fine.
show
Yeah,
a
yeah.
camera shot, but when you're driving, I think people understand a little bit better because it's very visual when you're driving. But when you're driving, getting a kind of a thrust of your hip is really
Right,
important. And the other thing about driving is um, your center of gravity keeps moving.
right.
And most
Right.
people kind of see it, they understand it. They understand like you do the X step and you keep moving. But then at the moment of release, you actually should be just about to throw yourself off balance because your center of gravity needs to keep
Oh.
moving. And
Okay.
so
Right.
when you throw, you're
Yeah.
immediately going off balance.
Right.
I think a lot of
Okay.
people, when they plant their last step and then they throw and then they put the brakes on
Mm-hmm.
because they
Mm.
feel their center of gravity moving past that point, and it's a very uncomfortable feeling. You feel like you're going to fall.
Right.
So most people bend their knee or they twist, but they don't keep the momentum going forward. They shift it into the momentum going sideways and twisting. And that kills your accuracy as well as your distance.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
That's
That's a good tip for us for sure. Hey, Daryl?
yeah, absolutely. I was going to ask you, I was going to say if you had a mental tip as well, but something you said earlier on that kind of stuck with me, and now I've forgotten exactly what you said, but it was something you said earlier on about minimizing mistakes and maximizing something else, and I forget the exact wording that you said.
Opportunities.
Opportunities, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had
Well, that's easy to say. That's really hard to do.
right. Yes.
Fair enough.
I forget who it was last week, Jeremy, in the junior episode that they said aim small, miss small.
Yes. Yeah.
I forget. I
You
Aim
know,
forget.
with all
small,
six of the
miss.
juniors we had over the last 2 weeks, both of them were, or all six of them had great tips for us. And even right
Yeah.
down to Alistair Robertson, Elaine, he was on and
Mhm,
he's 11 years old. And he was giving
mhm.
us insight on the game that was years beyond his age as well. So,
Yeah. I don't know if you would agree, Elaine, but that's probably one thing that is maybe missed a lot of people. People work on form. They work on, all aspects of the form, whether it be putting, driving, whatever. But the mental side of the game, having that right mental approach to the game as well, can probably save you a lot of strokes as well.
Oh, I think everyone realizes that as soon as the horn blows start, it's a completely different experience than
Right.
all the practice rounds they've ever played in their life. So we all know this, but it's awfully hard to practice the
Mm-hmm.
mental game.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You largely you can only practice your mental game by putting yourself in that competition scenario. Now, you can play games with yourself to put some mental pressure on. So you can imagine when you're putting that, this is the putt you need because so and so is one stroke behind you and you got to keep ahead of them.
Yeah.
And psychologists say when you do that scenario playing to yourself, it's not real, but yet you do get a physiological response. Your heart starts to beat
Okay.
faster,
Right.
etc. So that's a way you can practice the mental game. Um, but a great tip is, anytime you're practicing or playing practice rounds, um, take it seriously.
Mm.
Perfect practice makes perfect.
Right.
So it's
Right.
not just reps. It's not just getting there and throwing. It's getting there and throwing with the right form. It's not just throwing a sloppy approach shot because you're chatting with your friends while you're playing casually. It's just
Yeah.
to take that 2 seconds to really focus on what you're doing.
Fair
Fantastic.
So
enough.
those
I
are
love
ways
it.
to practice the mental game. But again, unless it's real competition, it's not going to give you the full impact of making your mental game stronger.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Elaine, thank you for that, and thank you for all the time. We're going to get quite to the end here. We've kept it a little longer. We appreciate it. Like September is not going to come soon enough for us. You've given us lots to practice with. And, I was thinking, Daryl,
Mm-hmm.
I'm down in Memphis for a few more days before I come back to Canada.
Right.
And my flight, when I was looking, I believe it returns at 10 p.m. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's when I land. Oh, speaking of islands,
This, you've taken a relaxing cruise, however the ship goes down. You manage to swim to an island, and fortunately for you, there's an 18-hole disc golf course. Which 3 discs are you taking with you on the island?
So it's that section of the show, Elaine,
Mhm,
this fictitious island that people make their way
mhm.
to. You just happen to grab the bag, and it just happened to have the last 3 discs or the most important 3 discs you have with you. When you get to the island, which 3 discs are you hoping to take with you to this island?
Well, my putter is going to be the electron atom. It is a
mm,
great
Right.
straight flying disc. The electron plastic is fantastic because whether it's dry or wet, it's got good grip. And I imagine, well, it's a desert island, so maybe it won't rain so much, but we could get the ocean spray, so
Yeah.
it'll work there. Um, and then I'm thinking this desert island is going to get a lot of ocean breezes,
Right.
so I probably want something
mm.
reasonably stable. So I would do my Eclipse reactor for a mid-range.
Right.
And that
Yeah.
way I can play at night as well.
Okay.
Because the Eclipse plastic, you just leave it out in the sun for a little while, it'll glow all night.
Right.
And then for my driver, I'm going to take the fission photon again to cut through the headwind.
Yeah.
Um, and those would be
I
my 3 discs.
I love it. It never ceases to
Me
amaze me
too.
on this fictitious island that is totally made up, that people create these scenarios that, it's going to be windy, it's going to be humid, maybe this is going to happen, maybe that's going to happen. But I love it. And then one other thing that we've added recently, or not recently now, but we've extended this little question for you as well. Out of all the courses that you've played, and maybe some courses that you would like to play in the future, if you could transfer one course to be on this island, so that this is the only course that you had to play with those 3 discs,
Oh
which
boy.
course would it be?
Oh, that's such an impossible question. Um, I take some holes from Maple Hill and some holes from Moraine State Park.
There you go.
Okay.
I like it. We can allow that. We'll build it there for you.
Fantastic.
Perfect. So it was the atom, the reactor, and the photon.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Perfect. All right. Well, I think unless you've got anything else, Jeremy, we'd just like to say thank you for joining us tonight, Elaine. We appreciate all your time. But before we let you go, we want to give you a chance to shout out any of your sponsors, or if there's anybody else you want to give a shout out, or anything that we haven't covered. Now is your time.
Oh gosh. Well, I have to shout out to my main sponsor, MVP Discs. I'm super happy to be with them. I'm getting more distance from the MVP discs, and if you only throw one MVP disc, I would say throw a putter, because I can throw my MVP putters farther than I've ever been able to throw a putter. And it is
Wow.
the gyro,
Okay.
because the um, outer rim, that black rim, is a
Mm-hmm.
more dense material. So you get the gyroscopic effect and the disc just floats. So
Yeah.
that's MVP. I got a shout out to my husband, Eric Vandenberg, who is currently number 7 in the world for the most unique disc golf courses played.
Wow.
So he's at
Congratulations.
Wow.
somewhere north of 2,300.
Holy smokes.
And thank you both for hosting me. It was really my pleasure to spend some time with you and your listeners this evening.
Yeah, no, we really
Oh,
appreciate having
Elaine,
you on.
yeah, it's been everything we wanted it to be and more. So we thank you so much for your time, and we can't wait to meet you in person in September.
Good. We'll have to have a beer together or something.
That
Hey, I like that
that
idea.
that works for me. Awesome. Thank you very much for your time, Elaine, and we will see you out in Nationals in September.
See you there.
Okay, thanks a lot. Have a good night.
I
Yeah.
don't know. I don't know what to say. I'm like, that's it. Elaine King has been on the show. I
Yeah.
think we just drop the mic. Thank everyone for listening, and podcast's over. 90 episodes, we're done. We can finish up. We've won podcasting at this point.
We've crested the top now. We've got to the pinnacle. Is that what you're saying?
I'm thinking so.
That's awesome. But you know we're not going to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're going to be
No,
back next
no.
week. We're going to
We
have
won't.
2 amazing guests next week as well.
Yes, that's it. Well, actually, three, because the plan right now, we mentioned Thomas and Sophia should be joining us fresh off
Yeah.
World Games out in China. And then at the end there, we tried to get him on before,
Right.
we tried to get Gabe Robinson on. And we want to talk to him about Project 15, talk some more nationals, get excited for that, and find out about his journey from being a professional football player to owning his own disc golf course. We got to figure out how we got from one to the other.
Yeah. No, exactly. Yeah. I'm hoping that we can get it working this time, because last time we tried without success. We tried to bring an episode, but fingers crossed we can get him on again this week and have a great conversation.
Yeah, that'll be good. And of course, we're going to continue doing. We're not going to stop at 90. We're going to continue doing amazing episodes like this one, and we want you to do us a favor and hop over onto all of our socials and help us out. Subscribe on YouTube, jump onto Instagram, follow us, support our Facebook page, put in the likes, put in the comments, tell your friends, tell strangers you meet on the street, anyone you can to help us grow, because that really helps us get this content in front of more people. And one of the things we recently did, Daryl, we were working with Statmando a bit and talking to them and saying, "Hey, we see all of these um, media appearances showing up on all these pros. Well,
Yeah.
some of these pros have been on our show as well. We're disc golf media. We're Canadian disc golf media, and from what
Yeah.
we've been told, they may start including us in those stats. I haven't seen it yet, but I'd like to see that happen."
Yeah. They took into consideration your request. So yeah, we're the longest running weekly Canadian disc golf podcast.
That is true.
Yeah.
All of those words are true.
In that order
So,
as well.
yes, exactly. Don't change it at all.
Yeah.
So we're currently at 430 YouTube subscribers, and our goal is to get to 500. And when we do, we're going to do a giveaway. We've shown a number of discs, but I think, Daryl, it's time to go to the Tickle Trunk and show us the latest edition that you've got there. I think it's going to help when you
Oh,
have all those discs make things a little bit easier.
right. So, like you've said, we've shown all the discs, we've shown the minis and things like that. What are you going to do? You're going to need something to put them all in. So, the latest addition to our 500 subscriber giveaway will be this Discmania Fanatic Go disc golf bag, which is going to hold up to 18 disc golf
Mm.
discs. There you go.
Well, it'll hold
Courtesy.
13 more because we're already going to fill it with 5.
Well, there you go. Yeah. This tickle trunk
And you
is getting
said
fuller
courtesy
and
of?
fuller, courtesy of BR Disc Golf and Chain Up Podcast.
Nice. That's right. Well, that's a great segue there, Daryl, to our sponsors and the codes that we have for giveaways. So BR Disc Golf being one of them, go over
Hmm.
there and use our code ChainOut, get 10% off if you want some stuff before that giveaway. Head over to Cardinal Disc Golf. Thinking about Cardinal Disc Golf, Daryl, and using ChainOut podcast there or using ChainOut to get 10% off is I think they're pretty happy having Gannon as part of their team.
Yeah, you
And one of
think?
the reasons I say that is, well, on one side, maybe not because they have to do so many jerseys. I wonder what the world's jersey is going to look like.
Yeah. Well, this
But
is
on the other, go ahead.
no. It's an inside thing. Sorry.
Okay, and then the other thing I'm thinking about with it too is that they've already changed it up on the PDGA website. So Evelina and Isaac are gone,
Yeah.
Gannon and Owen are up, and Gannon is wearing his Cardinal Ice Crystals jersey on
Yeah.
the site. So
Yeah.
now for the next year, Cardinal
That's
is up on the PDGA site with Gannon.
yeah. That's pretty good. Good
Yeah,
free advertising.
definitely. Well, and then
Yeah.
also for sure. And then with the rest of the codes, as you know, use COP15 at GOAT, the greatest of all towels. Get yourself 15% off. Use Chain Out at Chains, the disc golf board game. Get yourself 25% off. Thanks to Callum over there. And then you want to support us more, go over to our Patreon, check out all the different levels. If you do pick a paid level, you're going to get free entry into all of our contests,
Hmm.
including that Starbat one that we're going to be doing the wheel for next week or in the next few days.
Yeah.
And yeah, thanks to all our Patreon members for helping us out and supporting us, and for everybody out there who's listening to this, whether live or after the fact. We appreciate you all. And what are we doing next, Daryl?
Well, Jeremy, I wanted to say something. Oh no. Yeah. After that.
Okay,
Sorry. Before that, head over to our Patreon page where you can sign up for any tier, including free, and you'll receive a link for more disc golf content for our Around the Basket episode. We'll get to the pre-show
sure.
going right away as soon as we finish here. We're probably going to start in the next 15 minutes or so.
Now, Daryl, do you remember Saturday Night Live at all?
I've heard of the show.
Okay, well, on that show, there
Hmm.
was a section when I was growing up where it would come in and it was just this little interlude between skits as they were changing and setting up and moving cameras and such.
Right?
And it was called Deep Thoughts with Jack Handy. And it would be this sentimental moment where, it would just be very kind of whimsical and it would be this thought that started to sound very brilliant, but then finished off not brilliant at all. It
Right?
kind of reminds me of what comes next on the episode tonight. What do you think?
Yeah, exactly. So you know what, Jeremy? I'd like to take this opportunity just to say, whether you're chasing birdies, dodging bogeys, or just out here perfecting the art of tree love, remember, life, like disc golf, is all about the right release, the perfect follow through,
Hmm.
and knowing when to let it fly. Until next time, keep your grip loose, your lines clean, and if your final putt is just a little too strong, that's
You know what that is?
what is that?
That's a
Chain
chain
out!
out.
Thanks, everybody.